the Sunday live stream, and we got a lot of things to cover, so let's just jump right in. Today, what I want to do is, like the thumbnail and title suggest, we're going to talk about summaries and summaries of a lot of information that is condensed into a smaller parts. And thankfully, I've got someone that's going to help me, and that would be Tony from Thinking Crypto. My man, what's up?
Hey, Rob, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Dude, it's been, how long have we been in this game?
Man, we've both been here since the 2017 bull run. I got in late 2016, so we're about around the same time. But yeah, we're like OGs now.
Imagine, well, when we got in it, that was kind of laughable to think about, because it was like all the people before us. Now here we are, and people looking like, "Hey, I'm a class of 2021." We're like, "Really? 2021? Yeah, that's what it is." So everybody, if you're not familiar. Me and Tony, we've been on this parallel path for quite some time. We finally got together and did a show. And if you are so inclined, there's a links in the description. You can follow Tony on X. And I didn't notice this until today that your shirt in your picture is fire. I always thought it said Thinking Crypto because I never zoomed in. And I'm like, oh, so you got a Fire Gary Gensler t-shirt, pretty good one. And then also you got a great channel here on YouTube. And we're going to go over a lot of these great interviews, and we're going to break it down by the miners, the corporations, the regulators, or the congressmen and women that you've interviewed. And that's a lot of people. And also some titans of industry like Raoul Pal, Kathy Wood, Mark Yusko, and then the Mooch. So before we get into that, Tony, how'd you get this? Where'd you get this shirt, man? And how can I get one of these?
So not to shill here, but I do have it on my merchandise store. So if you want to grab one, you can do it. I've been certainly, along with everybody, not a fan of Gary Gensler and all the bullshit that he's been doing. So trying to start the movement, because, speaking to the folks in DC, like at the Blockchain Association and the Chamber, believe it or not, the content we're making, the tweets we're putting out, it's having an impact. Because the dynamic has changed, right? In the past, before social media, you could easily control the narrative by having TV ads or radio or print. True. Now, people are on social media, and if you're generating buzz, it helps to change the narrative and change the optics. And I'm telling you, people who are tweeting, fire Gary Gensler, calling him out, those members of Congress and regulators are on Twitter are recognizing that.
No kidding. So, okay, you know what? I was going to start the other way, but let's do it that way. So, instead of starting with like, Fred Thiel and Zach and Saylor, let's start with the congressmen and women, because these guys are pretty big of our proponents of crypto. You got Tom Emmer, you got Warren Davidson. I follow both of those guys. French Hill, Darren Soto, Mike Flood. So talk to us about the takeaways that you've had when you've interviewed these gentlemen. What's been the consensus for what they're talking about? And like you said, like, what are we doing here in the space to kind of bring things forward as far as crypto?
Sure. So there's multiple levels to this. When it comes to politics, right, there's certainly policies, but a big part of politics is optics and whose narrative is winning. And you see, that's why Elizabeth Warren will take her time out of her day to tweet bad things about crypto, right? Or FUD, I should say. And that has an impact. It drives clicks, impressions, and all that. So there's that layer. And certainly these congressmen who get the technology, they recognize that as well. That's why Warren Davidson will talk about his restructuring of the SEC bill and tweet fire Gary Gensler, right? So with Tom Emmer and so forth. They're not doing that for fun, because they know that this is part of politics is a game of optics and narratives. And the more content we put out there, the more impact we will have. And from interviewing these folks, one of the things that give me hope is that they get the technology. They may be the handful right now, and the numbers are growing, but they get it, and they are trying to take action. Obviously, the majority of them are on the Republican side. Don't get me wrong; there are Democrats who support crypto, right? But there are the majority on the Republican side, and unfortunately, they just have control of the House right now, and from talking to Tom Emmer and these folks, Elizabeth Warren and Maxine Waters, these folks have a lot of power. So it's hard to, for example, hold Gary Gensler accountable. So they're trying their best to do the optics play. And that's why Patrick McHenry came out and said, don't make me subpoena you. now, right? For the FTX documents and things like that. But I'm really happy that you have these Republicans and some Democrats who are on board, who get it, and they're making a push.
Hey, yeah, it's interesting that these guys are actually, because when I got in, it wasn't congressmen and women were talking about crypto. They certainly, the only thing that if they did talk about it, what they were saying was the same thing that Jamie Dimon was saying. And of course, Elizabeth Warren is saying that this is for illicit activity. It is for the cartels. It is for sex trafficking. It is for the most vile of circumstances. But it seems like things just have changed. So now that you've talked to them, when you first started to interview them, to like more recently, because I think you just had Tom on not too long ago, has it been like, has the tone changed dramatically, or has it just been a little bit of a subtle thing?
Yeah, going back to what you were saying, when we got in, it was taboo to talk about crypto and even, align yourself with it. And not only with the politicians, but Wall Street, right? They did not want to touch this thing. Everybody was watching Jamie Dimon in 2017. I remember September 2017 when he came out and he made his big statements, right? You're all going to lose your money. I'm going to fire anybody who touches this at JP Morgan, right? That was that time. But I think education was the big factor. And that's where the Chamber of Digital Commerce, Blockchain Association, Coin Center, and all these folks, and don't get me wrong, companies like Coinbase, Circle, and so forth, started educating, going to DC and spending time there really helped. And, it's I don't want to sound like an ageist, but there are the younger members of Congress who got it quicker than some of the older, right? And those who maybe were more familiar with technology, they picked up on it. And they're like, oh, we get it. This is the next layer in the internet. And there's an opportunity here. So I would say from the folks I've interviewed, like Tom Emmer and so forth, many of them already understood it when I got around to interviewing it. It seems like I said, the advocacy groups and the lobbying groups did a great job educating them about it.
Yeah, you know what? So so everybody who's listening home, the reason why I'm so interested in this is because I like to see the paradigm shift of the public consciousness. Because when we take a look at it, beforehand, when I got in, it was just numbers go up. And that was pretty much, that was like the big thing. And then of course you got into it behind, of course, the reasoning behind why Bitcoin and some digital assets actually work. And one of the things that I found was interesting, like you just said, is that of course, like some of the people, younger ones, just kind of got it, but the other ones took a little bit of time, and that's okay. And it just takes a little bit of time. There was this story that I just got from, it was Scott Milker from the Wolf of Wall Streets, and he interviewed the Mooch, Scaramucci, which you have done as well. And one of his stories that the Mooch talked about was how he, back in 2018, talked to Larry Fink, and Larry Fink told him, "What are you doing? Why are you in Bitcoin? That's dumb." Essentially, that's what he said. And he goes, you haven't done your homework yet. So, once you do that, then come back and we'll talk. And he said, just how important it was that they did the homework. So all these people that you are interviewing, I find it fascinating that, first of all, congressmen and women are actually on board. And second of all, they actually understand it. And it's not just, I guess it would be taking a knee to their base just because the base is there. I think they realize that this might be the future.
Oh yeah, and that number continues to grow. That's the exciting part, right? We're seeing more and more, even those running for office recognize that. Just look at the political candidates, RFK Jr., Vivek, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, you have both Democrats and Republicans who recognize the value of this technology and it has to stay here. Just look at Richie Torres, right? I know he's not running for office, but young Democrat absolutely gets it. He's the one who has brought the heat to Gary Gensler in a couple of the congressional hearings. So it's amazing, man, the paradigm shift that is taking place from when we got in to now. And I try to remind people, like, we didn't have this back in 2016, 2017. You didn't have BlackRock and Larry Fink and these guys bullish on crypto. It was much harder to hold because there was still the ambiguity. Are they going to destroy this thing? Are they going to ban it? Now, those FUD or fears are out the door. Now it's like they're going to build with it. They're building their CBDCs and much more with it.
Yeah, it brings me to another point, which is I get people. I know, Tony, you're getting those same text messages I'm getting. Hey, bro, is it time? Should I get into it? What should I get into? And I'm like, to me, it's like it's so much easier these days to get into it. Like right now, like everybody everybody in the chats right now, a lot of wrenches. Thanks everybody for showing up. I appreciate you guys. I find it fascinating, like we're here right now and we pretty much front ran the largest institutions on the planet, which is great. And we're actually front running a lot of people. And there's still people out there like they're kind of on the fence going, well, should I really do this? And it's just, there's so many positive things going on right before the halving. We got like 90 days. Like this is like the right place, the right time. Now I'm not going to here to say that Bitcoin's going to 1 million, like John McAfee might have said, but I'm just saying these are the things that I think we're in the right place, the right time, the Goldilocks zone, as I call it. All right.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I literally got my cousin. I won't mention his name because I want to dox him, but he was texting me this week, dude. Send me that stuff how to buy Bitcoin. I had another family friend call me up, and we actually had a phone call on Friday. He was driving, and he's like, "Hey, what's your exit strategy for this market, and what are you doing?" and all that. But you know what really started getting people's interest and really broke down that psychological barrier of fear and is this legit? The ETFs. My cousin, the first thing he said, I heard the FEC or the FCC, and I was, oh, you mean the SEC? Yeah, they approved a Bitcoin ETF, and that was a clear example. I know it's like anecdotal, but I know there's other people who've been saying this too. The ETFs being issued by known brands that people know in the TradFi, your Fidelity, your BlackRocks, and so forth, is a big thing. It breaks down that psychological barrier for many of the boomers, and no offense, but
it is what it is.
And other people, yeah.
And you know what? We talk about that in depth. So we took care of the politicians, and that's great that they're on board, at least the ones that actually get it and have taken the time to actually learn about it. Now let's break it down. Let's go up for the miners, because this is Fred Thiel, head of Marathon Bitcoin mining. You've also had Chad Harris over in Texas and Bitcoin mining as well. And this one I got to take a look at, Alexandra Da Costa for the energy for solar powered mining. I got to check that one out. So when you talk to the miners, and again, this is 4 months ago. You've been in with these guys for a couple of years now. What's been their overall thought process for Bitcoin? Like, were they kind of hesitant a couple of years ago, and now they're really bullish, like just everybody, or they've been pretty much stable the whole time?
Yeah, great question. So definitely they're getting bullish, and they see that we are still relatively early, compared to other asset classes. And there's a twofold part to these miners, because one, they have the mining business, they're trying to mine with the cheapest energy and be as profitable as possible, right? It's at the end of the day, it's a business, so it has to make dollars and cents. But the other aspect of it is many of them have gone public and they have their stocks. So and look, that has been maybe a bit problematic for some of them. They get kind of destroyed on X, Twitter, and so forth. People are like, oh, your stock is down and so forth. And this is kind of confusing for some folks, like the crypto market versus the stock market, and things can move a bit different at times, even though there's a macro correlation. But the miners are bullish. Many of them are looking to expand globally. They're looking to also expand their business where they can not only mine Bitcoin, but help other companies set up rigs to mine. So having kind of a consulting service where, hey,
that's smart.
Some Saudi king or whatever wants to mine Bitcoin, some sovereign wealth fund or something wants to mine Bitcoin, they can go set up the facility and help get the things up and running. So they're looking to diversify their business. They're looking at cheaper energy. They're looking to tie into many of the power grids and support them accordingly. So the miners are bullish. They're looking long-term, and many of them see the ETF news as incredible for their business, because it's just going to drive demand for more Bitcoin. And look, the last bear market was pretty rough on certain miners who had to file for bankruptcy. But look, and some people were like, oh, you see, this is blah, 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 blah. And they spread FUD. But it's like, yes, businesses start up and they fold. And if the business is not run well, of course, they're going to have problems. So that has nothing to do with Bitcoin itself. That's just, are you running a profit? Are you managing your expenses and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's a good lesson, because everybody thinks that, we talked about this yesterday, there's a difference between the speculation and the price discovery versus what actually is utility and can actually be utilized. And when we talked about this, like a basic example, we took a look at Illuvium. Illuvium is a Web3 game, and it was almost $2,000 per token, and they had nothing. They had a little bit of a rendering. They had a white paper and hope, and now they actually have a playable game, and it's down like 86%. So, what are you going to do? That's just pretty much how it is in the crypto space. So, Tony, that would be, so when we talked about the miners, we talked about congressmen and women. Tell me about this one with Michael Saylor. This was 3 years ago. Let's see, was this 2021 or 2022 when he was getting pummeled?
So this was 2021. We were,
okay.
He was going all in, he made his announcement. Everybody wanted to talk to him. It was exciting times, right? And I can't remember, it was at the point, he launched the Bitcoin for Corporations initiative. I don't know if he had already convinced Tesla to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I think he may have. And so it was certainly exciting, right? This was new ground being broken, corporations adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. So it was a really, really great interview. I was nervous as hell because it was Saylor, right?
Sure.
And, Saylor, he had a lot of success historically with MicroStrategy, but also his other investments. He was early to Amazon and so forth. So I was a bit nervous interviewing him, but it was all around a good interview. And I think he really, really did something incredible. I don't know if anybody else was thinking about it, but adding Bitcoin to your balance sheet as a company, and that's paid off well for him, Tesla as well. And I'm hoping to see this cycle if other companies would do the same, given that you have the ETFs, but also I forgot the rule. I don't know if you know about it, but there was a rule where it makes it easy for companies to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And it got approved like last year.
Me and Jerry V. Hall are talking about this, and I forgot what it is. But so now, instead of on your balance sheet by claiming like the essentially when you bought it or the worst price, you can actually price it the right way so it shows profitability as opposed to showing losses continuously, which I don't understand the whole point. But that was supposed to be a big thing, and Michael Saylor talked about that, and everything's great. But here's a question though, Tony. When you interviewed him, this is in 2021, he was at the peak. He was so super, I'm guessing pretty confident, but then we saw him in 2022 kind of come down. Do you see that as kind of like the same thing for a lot of investors, or do you think he's just built differently?
One of the concerns I had for MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor was if the bear market broke them, that, where he, obviously he took debt out to buy Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
It would have been detrimental for the market.
Right.
That collapse would have been really bad. Can you imagine what Elizabeth Warren and all these people would have done? Jamie Dimon, it would have been horrible, but he made it through. He's up, and I think he's weathered the storm here. I think he's in for blue skies and sunshine because we're headed to new all-time highs. Now, how he continues to manage all this Bitcoin and how they're going to pay their debt, I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know the mechanics. The other aspect is people were treating the MicroStrategy stock as an ETF. They were doing Coinbase stock as well. So how does that impact maybe the little arbitrage he was doing with his company stock price? Ultimately, though, if he's able to continue and sustain the future market cycles, he could be one of the richest men in the history of the world. If we all agree where we think Bitcoin is going, and we know he's saying never sell and all that. Okay, Michael, I'll make some profits, but
Thank you. Exactly. But I mean, it's something I never really thought about. And you're right. If he would have sold like how Tesla sold, Tesla had, I want to say 60,000. Now they're roughly under 10,000 right now. If they would have sold a big chunk of it, how detrimental would that have been to the market? Not just for price action, but for the optics, like you talked about with congressmen and women. If he sold, and then, we're here, it would have been like a free for all. I think we would have seen a lot more depreciation of prices, but anything could be said. All right. So interesting on those two. Now let's talk about the Titans, which I always find these guys interesting. Yusko, always interesting interview. I've seen a bunch of interviews on different channels. Raoul Powell and Kathy Wood. And this was just 6 days ago. So I know that Kathy's probably flying pretty high with the ETF. What's the sense when you talk to like a Wood, a Paul, Michael Arrington as well? Wow, and Yusko. What's their overall consensus of like what's going on in the market? Are they as super bullish as they appear to be? They're like, well, I don't know about this.
Oh, they are definitely super bullish, and I think they've got skin in the game, of course, and they've done a lot of research. Kathy and Ark, they put out a lot of literature. They got a lot of smart people working with them.
Yeah.
Raul, I mean, this guy, I love listening to Raul because he looks at it from the macro. So he doesn't focus in on Bitcoin and crypto, but how Bitcoin and crypto fits into the macro. And I love listening to him and reading what he puts out. He does a lot of great analysis and research as well. Mark also has a great pulse. So they are definitely bullish and they are all in. And I think the guy who started this all, I think, and really cleared the path for the hedge funds and big time investors was Paul Tudor Jones. If you recall, 2020, I was blown away when he came in and was like, yeah, we're adding Bitcoin to our portfolio. We feel it's the fastest horse in the race. And I think that Stan Druckenmiller, Bill Miller, all these guys started following suit. And then, and I think, they're all in. And then what's his name? Ray Dalio, also his firm took a position. So they're all here, man. It's incredible to watch it unfold and all of them to capitulate, even some who were naysayers in the past.
It's a good thing. Like, I'm glad you're on the show because when you talk about all these people together, all the politicians and all the institutions and all, of course, the miners and the corporations, when we got in, man, there was very little of this. And now it just seems like, and people are still questioning, like, is this real? Is this how it is? Because, and it's a funny thing because they'll say like, I saw Jamie Dimon on CNBC and I can trust that guy. And he said that it was cartels and illicit activity. And so, and Elizabeth Warren wouldn't lie to me because, she has an annual salary of $235,000 and somehow, some way she's worth over $100 million or whatever. So like, I look at this and I think to myself, am I just not doing a good job of convincing people? Because like we have so many people for us, Tony, and yet some people are still asking the question. So what are we doing wrong here?
So Rob, I've thought about this exact topic in question that you're bringing up. And what I learned, listening to guys like Raoul Pal and so forth, it's the S-curve adoption. We are the early adopters. And unfortunately, unless people are open-minded and they're willing to do the research and take the time and not look at Netflix for a few days and just spend 10 to 20 hours to research this, right? I can't even tell you how many hours I've spent reading white papers and studying projects and listening to great minds speak about this, right? And even my wife is like, dude, enough with crypto.
Yeah, I know. I get that too.
But unfortunately, there's a segment of the population which follow the herd. And if you are here, those of you who are in the chat and you're here when the price is going down, there's blood on the streets and you're taking a position at that point, count yourself lucky. You don't realize how lucky you are out of billions of people. I'm not trying to sound cliche here, but it's true. The S-curve adoption, you're here early. And for the first time in history, you don't have to be an accredited investor. You could be a partaker and kind of have equity, right? As the networks grow, you hold the tokens and you participate in the value of the growth of those networks. There's never been anything like that in history. And obviously with the hard cap supply and many tokens like Bitcoin, it allows you to make incredible return. Now, with that said, you do have to understand the market cycles. When am I buying? When am I selling? So that's important.
Yeah, exactly. And on this channel, everybody knows about the 4-year cycle, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But before I want to move on, because I know you gotta go. You have a hard stop in like 10, 20 minutes or so. Yeah. Before we go on to like exit strategies and what you're going to do as far as getting, as the blow off top market starts to really get crazy, just real quick, tell us about some of your more interesting interviews. And of course, you told me one before. You don't have to tell me that one because that was pretty. I don't know if you can say that, but like the other, like if there's any other like, well, that was crazy, or that was enlightening, or that was fantastic? Like what are some of like the ones that really stand out in your mind, and why?
Sure. Well, I have to mention John McAfee, right? I know we talked
All
about it.
right, cool.
I won't give the details, but it was just so
Okay.
wild. It was wild. I was like shell shocked after the interview because he was just, I don't know, man. He was on something. I'll put it that way.
So let me remind everybody. So John McAfee was, if you don't remember, it wasn't just McAfee antivirus. John McAfee was huge into crypto, huge into Bitcoin, and did some really some shady things towards the end. But whatever. Unfortunately, he passed away. These things happen. But he was quite outspoken. So when you interviewed him, was this after 2017 or 2018?
Oh yeah. So this was, I think, late 2018 or early 2019. So definitely after the bull run peak.
Yeah.
But there was still a lot of excitement because people were like, whoa, what's this new thing? What's happening? Right. It was, you still had the residual euphoria effect. Even though we were headed into a bear market, but it was pretty incredible in interviewing him because look, with all the baggage that comes with John McAfee, he's still a smart, very smart guy. The fact that he built, that business, and then he is an early adopter of crypto. He recognized it. He got it. And some of the use cases and things he talked about, it was incredible. I think he was ahead of his time. And now some of those things are coming to fruition, and many developers and innovators are paying attention to. So that was a wild interview. One I was really inspired by, and it was a big win for me, was Michael Arrington, because he's one of my heroes. I knew of Michael Arrington going back to the Silicon Valley days and TechCrunch. Reason why I had an affinity to him was I was very intrigued by tech. And I interviewed him a couple of times. So the one that might be there might be the most recent one. That's the most recent one. So the one I think it was back in 2019 or 2020 that I got him on the first time. And he built obviously TechCrunch and all these great tech companies. He had a pulse on tech, and I was trying to build my own blog and do things along those lines. So I followed him for years, and then he went into crypto. So it was like, I see the path that he's going, and many of these early internet entrepreneurs. So I had like Jeremy Allaire on who Circle. He's also a Web 1.0 guy.
Was he really? Back in the day.
Back in the day. And that's one of the things, having interviewed these folks makes me more bullish, because I have the background. I can see the macro and the journey they took, and that they recognize, here we go again, next tech opportunity.
That's exactly right. Because I had Yatsu from Animoca Brands. And when he was on, he told me the exact same thing. When he was living in China, he was like, I was around for the very early stages of web, which is Web 1.0. And he goes, I would go around and I would create a website, and I would go and like tell these owners, like, this is gonna be the next big thing. They're like, get out of here, kid. This is stupid. And he's like, okay. And of course, like as time goes on, he's like, so would that happen? And he said, we went into Web 2.0 with the different apps that we submitted to Apple and Google. And he goes, and those did well. And then of course, then there was a little bit of a slide down. He goes, now I see it. It's going to be Web 3. And that's why Animoca Brands is such a juggernaut in the Web 3 space. So yeah, I mean, it's just, when you have that history, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. Yeah. Once you get there, you're like, well, this is just obvious. And it's the same thing. So yeah, I can see that.
And the other guys I've interviewed, which were also great for me personally, and learning and seeing the future of this tech, was the guys who were at Netscape.
Netscape, oh my God.
So Mark Andreessen, Ben Horowitz, right? They got A16. We know they're Mark Andreessen, one of the founders of Netscape, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? There's some other names there who are now in crypto. Mike Belshie, founder and CEO of BitGo. You had what's the guy? Bill Barheit from Abra, also a Netscape guy. Yeah.
See, it just keeps going over and over again. And that's why when people say, it's always fun to me when people say, well, Rob, this time is different, or this time, I'm like, no, it's not. It's all the same thing going over and over again. It's just a big cycle. And that's just how it goes. Mathematics. Okay. So enough of us pondering about the history. Tony, let's give the people what they want. Let's talk about getting out, or what's going to happen because right now I feel like we're in a bit of a lull right now, but I still think it's a bullish sentiment, even though we're in a neutral territory as far as the fear and greed index and stuff like that. But for me, there's a link in the description of all my videos. And there's 3 videos I want everybody to watch. And the first one is why and when I'm selling 80% of my crypto in 2025. Now, I should rename this to 2024, 2025, because who knows? because I'm looking at specific indicators, MVRVZ score, Poyle multiple, pi cycle tops, a bunch of different things, right? So we have that. And then I put out this tweet today, and I remind everybody that as we get to this blow off top, I'm going to start to treat not you guys, but all the tourists that come in. It's going to be like Army boot camp. I'll be tough but honest, but I'm going to let them know that they're probably not going to make it. They should probably just drop out now. No free rides. And of course, when the blow off top comes, then I'll actually step down from this channel and I won't come back until the bear market. So Tony, what's your strategy here? How are you doing things? Because you've lived through a couple of these cycles and you know how crazy it's about to get. So where are you at?
Sure. So great points. And, every cycle I'm learning more and more. And that is how to make the highest ROI and to check my emotions at the door, have a plan, put it on paper, and realize no one can call the bottom and no one can call the top. So you have to ladder in, whether that's laddering in on the way down and laddering out on the way up. When there's blood on the streets, that's when you should be buying. That's where you got to fight through that fear. Now, I'm not saying put your life savings. Obviously, we want to be responsible. We want to be risk averse, right? You're putting money that you can afford to lose as you would in investing in stocks or real estate. Yeah. Ladder in, buy that blood on the streets. And so I did that in November to December 2022. So
very nice. Very nice.
The coins I bought are up right now. I actually did sell some Bitcoin at 48K because I saw it moving similar to what it did in 2019. That is the retracement move and then a pullback and then continued move up to new all-time highs. But there's about a year till we get to that, right? And for my exit strategy, I have a spreadsheet that I have, and I have all my coins mapped out, the supply and how much I'm taking at each price point. And there are some coins I'm leaving long-term, and specifically like Bitcoin, right? I'm not selling it. I'm leaving it. It's like for my daughter and so forth. But I have it on paper, and it's important. Get it on paper. This way, when the emotions come in strong, and when people are saying, "Don't sell diamond hands," no. Stick to your plan because you will be diamond hand all the way to the bear market, and you'll be kicking yourself. Don't do it. Put it on paper, guys. Check your emotions. And this may sound weird, but it's kind of therapeutic. And I'm not your therapist, but sometimes write out your emotions. How am I feeling today and why with the market? Because when you're dealing with a good amount of money and having gone through this, I realized, okay, what is my plan? How am I feeling today? Why? What's the market doing? And that helps me to process my emotions because they can come in strong, man. The greed, the euphoria, and vice versa. The fear and the blood on the streets. So my plan: ladder up, cash out, put it on paper, and don't be too greedy. We don't know what it tops out at. Last cycle, everyone is saying 100K. It stopped at 69.
Yeah.
So you don't be greedy where I definitely got to hit 1 million. Unfortunately, no one has a crystal ball. We can't predict the future. So you got to take the profits and run, man.
Yeah, exactly right. So Tony, when you're talking about that, can you say that comment about the hands of diamond real quick, just one more time so people understand that? Diamond hands of some sort?
Yeah. So if you recall, for those who weren't here in the last cycle, there was a movement. Don't sell your Bitcoin. Diamond hands to 100K. There's a lot of people who didn't sell, and the bull market came and left, and they got stuck. They didn't take profits. Don't listen to other people when it comes to statements like that. If it's not backed by the charts or the technicals or the data, they're lying to you. Unfortunately, Rob, I think the dirty secret here is some people on Twitter are there to manipulate you for their longs and for their shorts. So this is why you have to have a plan or you will be manipulated.
Oh my goodness, I do declare, I did not believe that would actually happen. So yeah, that's totally true. And then there was one more piece that I wanted, and I agree totally with you, Tony, and that's why I have my rules over here, which the first one you can't really see, but it's all gone, which means don't invest more than you can afford to lose. Everything's a scam until proved otherwise.
Yeah.
Don't leave things on exchanges. Don't use leverage. All right, 2 or 3x. All right, whatever, if you want to do something like that. take profits on the way, because nobody ever went broke taking profits. And then there was one thing that you said about judging with your emotions or dealing with your emotions. And I think it's one of those things that, like, as like people, guys were like, well, I don't have to deal with that. But it's true. And things are going to happen, especially as you start to go, trust me, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm up 25x.
Yeah.
This is a lot of money. But if it did a 25x, why couldn't it do a 50x? Why couldn't it do a 100x? So in the description of all my videos as well, at the very, very bottom, whoops, hold on. Very, 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 very bottom, there's recommendations. There's one website I recommend above all else. It's the Daily Stoic. And if you've ever taken a look at Marcus Aurelius or any of the different the Stoics that are out there, they will help you regulate your emotions in a grand way so you don't do stupid stuff, which I have done a lot of my life.
Rob, I kid you not. I look at that YouTube channel and I have a copy of Marcus Aurelius's meditations.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, here's my booklet for journaling, which I do every single day, because you can really figure out what it is that's important to you and what's not. So
exactly.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. One quick note I want to mention, like, folks sometimes get turned off by the volatility, but you can use that to your advantage. And it took me a while to learn this. I swing trade. I don't use leverage. And so for example, Bitcoin is correcting right now, but you do have to learn some of the charts and like the Fibonacci models and the wave counts. But I don't get it perfect all the time, but I've made money swing trading. So I'll buy Bitcoin as it heads to 35K. If it bounces back up to 45K, sell. I just made some money. You can do that. So just something to think about.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of having different channels. That's why I recommend everybody, you have to take a look at different channels for different views and perspectives, because on this channel, we don't really do too much of that, but Tony does. And that's an important thing to differentiate. So maybe that's why I put those links in the description. You can check out Tony's site. So Tony, you got like 5 minutes or so? We're going to go over some quick questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Good.
Ryan says, who is Tony? So first of all, if you're just in and you're a little bit late to the party, don't worry about it. I got you. So this is Tony from Thinking Crypto. He's been around since 2016, and he does some great, not only just some great interviews, but he does have some, he's got some really good day-to-day information that you probably should check out, especially if you're into TA in the markets and a little bit of swing trading. Sounds good. Fox Savage Gaming says, Tony, how did you get all those amazing guests? That is a great question. How did you get like the senator and the Republicans and the congressmen and women and Arrington and all those things?
Sure. Great question. So certainly being persistent, a lot of hard work. I use any outlet, Twitter, X, email, networking, hitting up people on LinkedIn, but also making sure I maintain a professional level on my podcast and YouTube channel. No overhype, because people don't want to be associated with stuff like that, right? Not, oh, here's the next 500X gem. Like, I don't do stuff like that. Right?
Hey, you know what, Tony, if you want more subscribers, all you got to do is open your mouth, take a picture, and then say price predictions. That's it. That's the recipe for success. All right. Aristotle Plays got a good question. Tony, besides Rob, who was your best interview that you would recommend? That's a good question. Let's say top 3, because top 1's pretty difficult, because there's different pieces of information you can get. But top 3, you're like, watch this, this, this.
I have to say Raoul Pal, just because the way he thinks from a macro standpoint and understanding economics, tech, and crypto is incredible.
Yeah.
Getting Kathy Wood was a big one for me recently. And Michael Arrington, because he's one of my heroes, honestly. Yeah,
that's a good one. So you got Powell, Wood, and Arrington. I want to check out the Arrington one. He looks like a jovial guy.
He's a very nice person. I met him in person, but yeah, he can come off very rough, though. He's like very straight to the point.
I appreciate people like that these days. Trust me.
For sure.
Darren says, hey guys, this is a good question. Do you put money aside now for buying projects that aren't even out yet? Which is a great point, because we've been going over this Goldilocks theory, which in the last cycle, let me just pull it up. In the last cycle, when we had, right around the halving, there was a lot of different projects that came out that were pretty darn good. And we could see that, there was like, okay, besides Luna, sorry about that one, Matic 2019, Axie 2020, Solana April 2020, AVAX September 2020, Sand, Shiba, Gala, and they all came around the halving, which is right this dead center line. So again, Darren, as he's asking this question, is do you put money aside for projects like that? Not degen products, but those that appear to have longer potential. Maybe projects similar to Poly or Sol last cycle.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I kicked myself in not jumping into it, and I really pissed that myself for this, is Injective.
Oh yeah, exactly. That came out of nowhere. I mean,
Yeah.
Mark Cuban recommended, and all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, and I had interviewed the founder, I think it was. I can't remember the exact title. And I'm just like, oh, I missed that one. But to answer the question, yes. And obviously, you want to do your homework, do as much research as possible. Who are these people? Can you find them on LinkedIn? Do they have a digital trail on the web, right? Just be careful because there's so much crap out there, but there are great projects. So I'm definitely looking at things like that. I get recommendations from different people, and I make sure I go through my due diligence.
That's pretty good. Yeah. And, and everybody, Tony said it, due diligence and do your own research. But even if you do your own research as much as you possibly can, it's investing, it's risky, and you're going to screw up at some point. And they're not all going to be winners. That's just how it goes. So just be aware these things are going to happen. And then let's see, last one before I don't want to make you late, Tony. Let's see. This one. It's a statement. I want to see what you think about this one. Because remember when we got in, Bitcoin was, transactions. Then it became a store of value. Then it became an inflation hedge. But Yankee Lander says, with the number of interest and quantity of Bitcoin ownership, Bitcoin has begun to get the stronger traction of the view that is truly a store of value, better than any asset. How do you feel about that?
I wouldn't say better than any asset yet, but I think it's on the path to that. It's growing up, it's maturing, right? It's maybe coming out of its teenage years, if one could argue. And the ETFs are helping it to go into adulthood a bit. And I think once central banks start putting it on their balance sheet, there is more El Salvador's. I think this statement could absolutely be true. I think it's going to be a better store of value eventually than gold. Gold will be second. And I think the hard cap supply is really incredible. And the blockchain, because of the blockchain, and you have the on-ramp from all over the world for anybody to participate in the network is incredible.
Yeah, and it's a good point about that whole piece of 21 million. It's not scarce, it's finite. And I know and people will say, well, what if they change it? What if they fork it? And I'm like, even if they fork it, that whole aspect of the 21 million.
They did it already.
Yeah, they did it. So they did it on Bitcoin Cash. They did it on Bitcoin SV, and they did it on Bitcoin Gold, which no one remembers that. But out of all those three, you know what they didn't change? The max supply. So in that situation, just remember that even if they change and do a hard fork, go right ahead. But it doesn't really work out as far as the long run. Anyhow, Tony, thanks so much, man, for stopping by. We appreciate it. Everybody, if you are looking for Tony, you can find him on 2 different places. Of course, you got it on X and YouTube. And I'm sure there's some other socials, but those are the ones that I use. And Tony's got a link tree. Hold on, let's see here.
Yeah, you can pretty much get me on everywhere.
Okay. Perfect. Instagram, TikTok, Threads, podcast, and a free newsletter. Man, people love free. Perfect.
Rob,
right.
Thank you for having me, man. Great to be here, and we'll have to do it again. I got to get you on my show as well, so we'll definitely plan that.
Sure, let's do it. All right, everybody. So that's it for today. Thanks so much. Enjoy the Sunday. Get out of here. Stop looking at charts and stuff like that. But Tony, we appreciate it. And guys, we'll see you on the next one.